there everybody, it's markcrilley. I'm back with another how to draw video. Today we're going to be learning how to draw the hind leg of two different kinds of animals. Now that might seem like a strange idea for a video, because it is a kind of a strange idea for a video, but I've always had trouble drawing the hind leg of a dog. And it kind of drives me crazy every time I try to draw one, and so I've tried to come up with a system that will solve this problem for me and at the same time pass it on to you guys. And the other one is the hind leg of a horse, and we'll get to that in kind of the second half of this video. But to begin with, let's start with drawing some basic guidelines to begin drawing the hind leg of a dog. All right, so we've got a shape here that's going to be for the thigh of the hind leg of the dog, and it looks a bit like, to me, like a balloon almost, except maybe stretched a little from top to bottom. If you can get this shape in place. And what I want to do now, just to help you understand what we're heading toward, is to draw, a line for the tail and sort of the back part of the dog, so that we understand, which direction the dog is facing in. All right, so now at least you can understand, I think, the basic idea of what we're heading toward. And once you've got this big balloon shape in place for the thigh, we're ready to start moving on to that next joint. Now, you know what makes a dog's hind leg hard to draw is this sort of zigzagging configuration, quite different from a human leg. And what I'm going to do right now is to draw what may look like a knee, but I believe it's actually kind of the heel of the dog. I'll talk more about that in a second. But we need to draw a circle over here. Watch how I do this. All right, so you see this sort of small ovalish shape, and the important thing is to pay attention to how far back it is compared to this thigh shape. I've really shifted it pretty far back. I suppose you can line it up with that side of the balloon shape and maybe shift it even a little further back from that. And get a certain amount of space there between the two, because now we're going to connect them with two lines. And I want you to pay attention to the difference. Although they may look similar, there is an important difference between these two lines, the way I draw them. So here you see the two different lines. This one in the front is pretty straight as it just connects these two shapes, but this one over here is really curving. And that's the key, I think, to getting the shape right here. Is you got this curving line that curves inward and back towards this circle. And now the next thing we're going to do is draw two straight lines that, as you would imagine, head back in this direction, creating this sort of zigzagging shape. So here you see two lines that are really pretty much parallel to one another, very, very straight, and of course the space between them much narrower, let's see if I can pronounce that, than the lines up here. And you're very nearly done with drawing this tricky hind leg at this stage. All we got to do is draw the paw. So give me just a moment to get that shape in place. And there you have it. That's my system, really, for drawing the hind leg of a dog. Get that first sort of balloon shape in there, drop this circle back, have the curving line, the straight line here, you get the two parallel lines, and then you get down to this paw shape, and you're pretty much done. Now, of course, there's a lot of little details to be added, and I will be doing that in just a second, but I want to get a sort of a second dog's hind leg back in here before I move on to that next stage. So as I said, there are other details to be added. I don't really want this video to be so much about shading and so forth, but hang on, I'm going to refocus so you can see the paw as I draw the details down there. So yeah, I thought I could at least do some real-time drawing here for the paw, and I feel like there's almost a sort of a thumb shape back here that comes in on the side, on the outside edge of the paw, before we come to these more sort of longer finger-like claws in the front, and maybe even get a couple of claws in there to sort of finish that off. Now I could go ahead and erase all these guidelines and just be done with this drawing right now, but I thought it might be interesting to keep all of the basic guidelines in place as I move on to drawing the horse. And then we can compare the different structures of the two different types of legs. So let's go ahead now, we'll refocus, and I'm going to get into drawing the hind leg of a horse. Now this is not exactly to scale. You know, the average horse is much bigger than the average dog, although I suppose this could be a small horse and a huge dog. It's certainly possible. But the thing I want to compare is the structure between these two different hind legs. And this one, we start again with that sort of balloon shape, a little wider, not quite so narrow as I had done with the thigh of the dog. And now it's time to do that same sort of technique of drawing a circle and shifting it back. So at this point, surprisingly similar, really, in terms of the relative size of this smaller circle and its location shifting back and the distance as well. Really surprisingly similar between a horse and a dog. It's going to change a lot as we head down towards the hoof. But let's go ahead and get in these two lines that connect these two shapes and see the degree to which they are identical to or very slightly different from the lines for the dog. All right, so again, quite similar. You see how this one curves inward pretty much as it had with the dog, and this one very much more straight by comparison. But one thing I want you to see is that this joint here for the horse's leg is a little more knobby as you come down. So this line is not connecting so smoothly at the end of it, but sort of just a little before the end of it, so that we're going to see a bit of knobbiness there. Indeed, over here, I think this is going to begin to protrude at a slightly more angular, in a more angular way. But let's go ahead and draw the next part of it, the two parallel lines that head down towards the hoof. Okay, so you can see that there is this sort of knobbiness to this portion here, and don't pay too much attention to the angle because, of course, the leg is flexible and can be in many different positions. But the main thing is to notice the again, this straightness, the parallel quality, and comparing it to the width of the upper part of the thigh there. Now here's where things really get different. We're going to draw a sort of an oval shape down here and then a hoof below it. So I'll go ahead and get both of those shapes in place. Okay, so you can see that things get quite different here compared to the dog's hind leg. We get this oval shape down here, and then we draw a hoof that is shifted back forward. And I'm going to just go ahead and do this real time right now, drawing the sort of connective tissue between these two shapes. You get a line that kind of comes out here just a little bit and then really curves in. You get a real curving in quality to the line here. And then this, again, allowing this to be a little bit knobby here, draw a more straight line that comes down and connects to the hoof shape. And that is how you finally get all the different components of the horse's hind leg, which I think you can see is considerably more challenging than that of the dog. Now, as I said, this angle here is just because the leg is stepping back. I'm going to draw a second leg. I'm going to do this all in time lapse, but you're going to see what it looks like when it's bent forward a little more like the dog's leg here. All right, so there you see with this slightly different angle what the leg ends up looking like. I think even so, it's not quite as sharp as the angle that you get with a dog's leg, that sort of reverse knee cap kind of look that you get with a dog. It's more of a gentle angle. With the horse, I'm going to do one last thing here, and that is to just sort of get the back of the horse and the tail in place, and then maybe we can do just a little bit of real-time drawing before heading into the shading portion of the video. All right, well, you can see that I've erased a lot of those initial guidelines that really help you just get the shape in place. And then you're ready to start adding some of the details. Now, this video, like I said, is not really going to go too much into the shading and so forth, but I thought I'd say that if you are doing a drawing of a dog's hind leg and you want to get a little bit more extra detail in there, there tend to be some lines back here, sort of the musculature that becomes visible here towards the back of the thigh, maybe just a little bit here in the middle of the thigh. It sort of depends, I'm sure, on the breed of the dog. And then for the horse, there's really quite a complex series of, I don't know if it's tendons or muscles. I can't pretend to be a huge expert on the interior anatomy of the horse, but you're going to see a lot of sort of line work in here of various, looks like muscles to me. But in any case, that's visible. It's not smooth surface, I guess is what I'm saying here. In this area, you're going to see little extra lines that become visible through the skin. And then here's one thing for sure. You can see a sort of a vertical line in this area that, again, is, I'm sure, related to the structure beneath the skin, straight between those two parts. Now, I did mean to say earlier that according to what I've read, when you look at the leg of an animal, that this is more like the heel, and it's almost as if they're standing on tiptoe compared to the human leg. And if you could see the interior bone work, you would understand that it's almost as if all these animals are on tiptoe, what we would perceive to be tiptoe. But certainly there seems to be a very visible difference between the bottom of the horse's leg in terms of having this sort of second knob, which you don't have with a dog's leg. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and finish up all of the shading in time-lapse, and we'll be back with a few final words. Alright, well, there's my video on how to draw the hind leg of both a dog and a horse. Let me know what you thought about it. I could do more such videos sort of comparing different types of animals. Certainly for me, I have struggled all my life really with drawing the hind leg of a dog in particular, and I'm glad that I finally, if only for my own sake, finally did a video that helps me battle that problem and hopefully triumph next time I sit down and try to draw a dog. But for now, let me go ahead and say thank you to anyone who has supported me by getting any of my books, like the Realism Challenge, my book on hyper-realistic illustrations. We've got the Drawing Lesson, a graphic novel that teaches you how to draw, and of course, Mastering Manga, the whole series, book 1, 2, and 3. Very grateful to anyone who supports me by getting any of those books, but let's go ahead and lay down this pencil. I want to say thanks to anyone who watched this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back with another one real soon.